Good afternoon, everybody, or maybe good morning if you're joining us somewhere like America, or maybe even good, very early morning if you're in Australia right now. Here we are, all four of us based in the UK, and we are going live with a panel/discussion, Diverse Voices, One Community. It's a privilege and it's true honor to have right now on the screen in front of you my four dear friends with whom we met about 6 years ago at one of the coaching events. And since then, we became really close friends as well as mastermind people. So I would like to introduce you, and actually, I would like you, ladies, to introduce yourself so actually audience can get to know you. And from there, we can go into the live discussion about the recent events and how obviously that impacted everybody, including yourself, as well as we can share tips from ourselves. So I would like to just to go around the screen. I will go with the top left, Maria, and then Chrissy, then Sobia. Maria, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us where you came from, how many languages you speak, and anything else you would like other people to know about you, please.
Hello, good afternoon, and thank you, Olga, and all my dear friends. So I have a multicultural background, I would say. I live in UK for 11 years now. Is the country I call my home, no doubt of it. And I have a background from Portugal and Spain. I lived in other countries before. I never call them my home, but I do call UK my home for the last 10 years. As you mentioned, we met all of us through a coaching event, so it's also what I do. But before that, I had a few years, over 30 years in the corporate world, from different roles, from international events to BDM with different countries. So all my life, 30 years of my life, was in the diverse world of different cultures, different language, and I did learn with every single different cultures, I would say. And so I'm fluent in four languages. That helped me in my job for during all these years. And the diversity is really where we learn and how we can develop for sure.
I
This is
saw.
me in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, Maria. And you're spot on. Diversity is something where we can learn. There's nothing to be afraid about. Let's just learn from it. Thank you so much for introducing yourself. Christina and then Sobia, please introduce yourself.
Hi, well, I'm Chrissy, spelt with a K. That's derived from my first name, Christina, and I'm from a Polish background. My parents settled here in the 1940s after the World War. They were of a certain age and came over here after all sorts of different trials and tribulations that they'd been through. And what I'd say to you about them was the fact that they didn't dwell on where they'd come from, but they dwelled on building and making our future the best it could possibly be from every opportunity that they could glean. So I remember as a child, my father saving up a little bit of money every now and then and sending us off on trips wherever he could so that we could gain as much experience of life as possible, you know, from as early an age as possible, and gave us every opportunity to broaden our horizons. So that's basically my background. I was a teacher for many, many years and retired not so long ago, but I felt a gap in, I suppose, what I really wanted to do with my life. So I became a life coach. And what I realized from childhood was that they gave me, my parents, the opportunities to shine in lots of different ways. And these days, that's exactly what I try and do with my clients. I pick up on their potential where they're feeling sort of jaded, let down, or whatever, pick them up and develop that unique skill and talent every single one of us has got, and utilize it for our best powers and those around us. So basically that's what I do as a life coach now.
Oh, thank you so much, Christine, for introducing yourself. Appreciate that. And Sobia, let's go with you now.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm Sobia Jawade, and professionally, I'm a leadership coach, keynote speaker, and I help leaders to thrive in business, in their profession, and have breakthroughs in their confidence. In terms of personally, I am from a Pakistani heritage. I was born and raised here in the UK, so I am British. I would say the English culture is a huge part of my identity, as well as the Pakistani culture. My great grandfather served in the British Indian Army, so fought in World War One and World War Two for the freedoms that we get to enjoy in the UK and in Europe and across the world, to so to speak. My grandfather then came to the UK and, from very, very humble beginnings, built up a business. My father then and my mother came here, and then the family grew. And so I would like to say I'm fully integrated within the British culture. Although maybe when you look at me, I may seem like I don't belong here, but that is the reason why I am so passionate about one of the roles I have in my professions, which is a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant, where I help teams and organizations create belonging in the workplace. I speak 3 languages. I speak English, I speak Punjabi, I speak Urdu. I'm fluent in all 3 languages. And I also am a little fluent in Arabic. I understand it, I read it, but not as fluent in dialogue. And that is a little bit about me.
Wow, thank you so much. I just love the diversity we have here, ladies, and thank you so much for doing this with me. In case if someone doesn't know me, I'm Olga Dana. Originally, I was born in Latvia during the Soviet times. So if somebody knows a little bit of history, that means Russian language was the primary language back then. So therefore, my native language is Russian. My background is a mix of Belarusian and Polish. Even though I speak Russian, nothing to do with Russia. I was not born in Russia, and I have no roots from Russia, but from Latvia. And right now, as of last month, I actually have dual nationality. So I have British and Latvian nationality to holder of 2 passports, which is very exciting, and really looking forward to travel with the British one very, very soon. When it comes to me coming to UK, that happened exactly 15 years ago on the 26th of May. That's exactly when I landed in the UK with my little boy, who was 2.5, and neither of us at the time spoke a word of English. So I had to learn from the scratch. That means I fully immersed myself into English language to the point where I struggle right now to write in my own language. I still can read, but I struggle to write. So I cannot say like yourselves, lady, that I'm, fluent in 3 languages, because I'm not. I still understand Latvian. I struggle to respond because English comes first. I can speak in very basic Russian, but I do everything in English because that's my primary language now. So slightly different there, but still 3 languages. I can understand them, as well as Polish. I can understand, but I don't speak much of Polish. So yes, that's my background. And when it comes to professionally, I do mindset and relationships coaching, as well as you ladies know, but maybe some other people don't know. I do speaking on self-leadership and relationships as well, not only in terms of intimate relationships, but also within organizations. And I'm very passionate about helping others. And that's why today we are doing this live discussion / panel, because as a result of our own mastermind session this week, right? It was on Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. We were just so passionate, and we were having really deep discussion about what exactly happened recently. And it really breaks my heart. And I must say, what happens recently is not only one event that happened relatively recently in the last few years, right? There were lots of events that actually are dividing society in 2 groups all the time: haters and allies all the time. And I think it's time to shine a little bit of light now on perspective, which is humble, human, average Joe perspective on what we think and what we experience as a result. And I would like to start with you, Sobia, just because it's so relevant to something what a friend of mine told me, and my heart was in pieces when I heard that. My friend said to me, I'm afraid to go outside. I'm afraid to go outside. In addition to that, in a Facebook group where I'm part of as a block of apartments, we have our own Facebook community. So somebody posted there a question: is it safe now to go outside? I'd like to take my child for a walk. And I honestly, my heart breaks when I read stuff like that. My heart breaks when I hear stuff like that. So I would like to start with you, just because you probably, out of all 4 of us, can relate to this firsthand. And what you share with us on Tuesday also breaks my heart. So could you please share your perspective on this, and how potentially can we help those people who are in your shoes?
So in relation to what's actually happening in the UK is that the far right extremists and terrorists are creating a lot of havoc. There's a lot of division, divisiveness, a lot of hate, and people who are of black, brown, Muslim heritage, people who are perceived to be non-white, have been attacked, sometimes assaulted, and this air of hatred and you don't belong here is prevalent. So in relation to just myself, I don't like to focus on fear, and I don't like to look at what divides us. I think that's a very pessimistic space to be in. However, there is a reality. I'm somebody who is out and about. I run my business. I'm independent. In the UK, it's summer holidays, and I am actually in fear of leaving my own home. Usually, I have a morning walk. I take my daughter to the park. We go out and about to the water park, activities, play gyms. We're avoiding those spaces. I'm not doing my morning walk. I'm not alone with my daughter outside. My husband, who is a pharmacist, had to close his business on Monday because the city in which he works in, there were rumours that there would be riots, there, far right extremist riots, and so he had to close his business. There were police riot vans in the city, just a street away, because his business is in the city centre. He had to leave his business. All of the staff had to go home, and he was parked just 2 streets away. And whilst he was there, and this is not me making a mountain of a molehill, this is me sharing vulnerably my experiences as a woman and as a wife at home. He was parked in his car 2 streets away, and the vision that I was having in my mind was the vision of the video footage that was released over the weekend, where rioters were on top of a car, surrounding a car that had Asian men in it, and they were breaking the windows. They were trying to drag the people out of the car. I think that took place in Hull. And so overall, thankfully, my husband was fine. There were only rumours. The business opened again, and there were no riots. But this is what we're dealing with. This is what people of colour, black, brown, especially Muslim, because there's a lot of Islamophobia out there, and that this is the day-to-day running of our lives. We are in fear. There is a lot. I would also like to say that recent protests have taken place, counter protests, where people have been very unified, and I think that is a voice, and these conversations are voices that we need to amplify to give people like myself and us hope.
I'm sorry to hear, Sobia, that you're going through this and your family, and I hear you, because I have so many people from different backgrounds where you can see them right now on the screen, for example, 4 different generations, 4 different cultures. But in addition to that, I have many other people from different, including Muslim background, and it breaks my heart to hear exactly what you're saying. And I know right now on news, there's a lot of fake news as well. So I know there's lots of confusion because nobody even knows what is true, what is not true. But right now you're sharing from your own first-hand experience, the reality of what it is like. And I must say that we as a society should be quite careful when it comes to what politicians are feeding us. We should be practicing our critical muscle, critical thinking muscle, because if we don't, we'll be always controlled and manipulated. What happens right now is exactly that, mass manipulation. It is mass manipulation in order to start hating a particular part of society. In this case, it is everybody who is Muslim or any other colored background, right? And I would like to, and I'm not afraid to say these words, but it's almost like we are taking back right now, back to Nazi time in Germany, right? When Hitler started propaganda about how their specific race is superior to everybody else, and how dare these Jewish people came along and took everything from them, similar to what right now many people are saying out loud, right? How dare some people came along and took the jobs and create businesses, and we don't have the opportunity. So I can see it's becoming really loud, really messy. And I think it's really time to wake up people and to say, stop listening to politicians. They are not serving you. They're using their power because they have their own agenda. But I'd like to hear a little bit more from Maria and Chrissy. What are your perspective on this? I know you're not coming from that background, but you are immigrants living in the UK as well, or born in the UK, but again, children of immigrants. How do you feel about it? What would you like to say about this? Any tips you would like to share, or just your perspective, please? Would like to start with Maria. What would you like to say about this?
Yes, Olga. I think, well, I'm not a British citizen, so I'm really an immigrant. Only 10 years here, so from the four of us, I'm the last one to be here. And I can say this for me is very sad to see, because I found myself in UK as maybe the most welcoming country I did find till now. And this for me is not at all the representation of UK and the British culture. And I always have been very, very welcome in this country. And since I start talking, I call it my home. So it's very sad to see all these mixed emotions here and mixed behaviors, which doesn't define a country at all. And I think many times it's only, or part of those behaviors, I feel that many times is only the fear of who is different or who looks different. And if we take ourselves from this example here, when we met, if we were afraid of each one of us because we look different, we have different kind of hairs, different colors, different ages, different countries. Our first language is also different in each one of us. So if we never spoke because we were fearing each other, we would never came to this point where we are now after 60 years of mastermind friendship, etc. So if people start thinking sometimes why they are fearing or reacting or behaving, um, different to someone else just because look different or dress different or talk different, you don't give the opportunity many times to see a completely different perspective, to know somebody with who you can learn so much as a person, as their culture, as their language, as their experience, all that. So I think many times the reaction in group is most motivated by just the fear of something that is different, is what I
That is
feel.
so true. That is so true, spot on, because people tend to simplify everything. And of course, our brain naturally likes familiarity. We always are drawn to familiarity. So if we go to the shop, we naturally will choose something we like. If within the same shop, they suddenly change the layout of where things are, our brain freaks out. We go like, oh my God, now I can't find anything. Suddenly, the usual shop, the usual grocery shop to me becomes a brand new shop because I have to find my way around it. And the same happens with when we meet new people, when we come across new cuisine, when we come across new situations, new circumstances. We are afraid. It's a natural reaction. But let's just take it as an adventure, as exploration. So I totally hear you and I completely agree with you there. There's a comment from Howard here saying, I'm alarmed listening to Sobia. I thought the protests were against illegal immigrants, but clearly the problem is wider than that. And I think your comment, Howard, is so spot on that, because the same happened with Brexit. So many people post Brexit were saying to me, I thought we were fighting against Muslim. I thought we were doing this and that. And I was just surprised how very little amount of people were doing their own research about what will happen before they voted for Brexit, right? And that misinformation, unfortunately, feeds masses, absolute masses. So, yes, Howard, you see, again, you just clearly show how there was massive misinformation. What was the whole thing about? So, thank you so much for saying that and sending love to Sylvia for sure, from Howard. So, Chrissy, what about your perspective? What would you like to say about this? Any tips how we could approach that? Or what would you like to suggest to those who are right now, like Sylvia, in that vulnerable situation, for example?
All I can say is, as a grandmother, being in this situation, if I was of a different colour skin, I too would have fears in terms of going out and looking after, my most precious legacy, really, the grandchildren that I have to look after. So it is an internal fear, but fear holds us back as well. And this is what people have been preying on here, to build that fear in amongst others. And when you think about it, all it can do is destroy. Whereas banding together of all sorts of different ethnicities and standing for one another and being supportive of one another is the only way that, quite honestly, we're going to bring about something that's a much livelier, better future, not only for ourselves, but for our children, grandchildren, and pass on something that is of worth. And that is what I see. I came from parents who had come from very, very troubled times. They'd gone through all sorts of traumas in their lives, really bad. They'd lost land, they'd lost possessions, they'd lost people that were very, very close to them and needed to restart a family. My father did. He met my mother in Italy. And from there, really, a new I suppose, legacy was born. You know, they then came to England and started a new life. And the England that they came to welcomed them and allowed them to restart and rebirth and redo everything. And I would like to see that. I wouldn't like to see walls torn down for the sake of being torn down. I would like to build on what is here within all of us because it is so precious, so valuable, and so worth keeping and passing on. The differences are good in terms of making us grow and see a different horizon and sharing one another's gifts and wisdom in that respect.
You're spot on. It's just sharing the gifts and talents and the diversity that we have within our cultures, within our backgrounds. And I would like to bring this example when it comes to cuisines, right? When we go on the street, and pretty much in any city in Britain, you will have multiple choices. You'll find Spanish and Italian and Asian and Moroccan and British and you name it. Like, you name it. And for some reason, people love that. They don't judge. They don't just refuse to go to one restaurant or another just because it's different food. Because we like trying different cuisines, we like trying different flavors. We like to go to one day maybe Japanese, another day to Thai, another day somewhere else, right? So why don't we have the same mindset when it comes to accepting other people's cultures? Why don't we have the same mentality when it comes to welcoming other people with their differences and learning from that and enriching our own knowledge, like almost like our own educational palette, if we would have it. I know we don't have it, but imagine we would have it, like we have flavor palette in our mouth, and that's why we like to try different foods. We could actually educate ourselves through embracing other cultures. And I'll share my own personal perspective on this because when I just came to the UK 15 years ago, because I came from Latvia, which back then, and I'm not sure about now because I haven't lived there now for the last 15 years, but back then, our people were still very, very judgmental. It is white people predominantly country, speaking Latvian for sure now predominantly because there's a government language. If you don't speak the government language, you can't even go to university or find good paying job. Okay, so you would be typically doing low paying job or labor job if you don't speak Latvian language, which is government language at a certain level. So therefore, of course, because of also Soviet time, we have lots of discrimination between Latvians and Russians, and many people hate each other. So I came from a country which is very discriminative in general, okay, very judgmental as back then. Again, I can't say it is now because I haven't lived there. So when I came to the UK and I landed at Leeds Bradford Airport and I lived for the first few months between May and I believe so August or maybe July in Bradford. And those who have been to Bradford, you know Bradford is very, very diverse, okay? It's very multicultural. And I must say, my first reaction was fear because I did not know how to react. And I'm saying this because I want to be completely transparent and vulnerable here that this is a normal reaction from somebody who comes from a completely white only background, haven't seen any other colored people in her entire lifetime because I wasn't traveling before as much, okay? So my first reaction was fear because I didn't know how to approach. Should I be afraid or should I be welcoming? Should I speak or should I not? Should I avoid or what shall I do? That was my first reaction because I did not know how to approach that. Then I met a couple of people, we start talking, and I met a couple of ladies and men, and you name it. And because of course you have a child, eventually as parents is how having conversations with some people, even the broken language, I was trying my best to communicate, right? But eventually I remember I met a girl who was from, I think, Kazakhstan. She spoke Russian because also post-Soviet time country, and with her we bonded over both being mothers, over speaking Russian language, and she introduced me to the diversity of Britain and how beautifully different it is to any other country, and how beautifully cultures are working and playing and living alongside each other, as well as in many cases fighting against each other. And that was just shocking for me to realize how many differences are out there, as well as how different reactions are on things. So I must say, openly, vulnerably, honestly, my first reaction was fear, because I did not know how to approach such a huge difference. But I've seen myself growing through and across all the 15 years and embracing these differences and getting more and more friends from so many different backgrounds. I probably have a friend from every nationality, right? That's how far I went, okay? Because just naturally, I became really curious and I decided to shift my identity. Because my old identity from Latvia was somebody who's very judgmental, somebody very closed minded, somebody who is not willing to open my mind and open my inner world to the outside world. And I believe if I manage to do that, right, I think everybody can do that. So I partially understand some people who probably were born and bred within the same people through the entire life, and now only they're exposed to difference. Of course, it's scary. I understand you. But what I can reassure you in that when you will start opening your mind and you will just start learning how beautiful it is to get to know other cultures, their food, their national things, their natural cultural differences, you will become educated person. Not ignorant, but educated. And the beautiful thing about it, that you'll be less chances that you'll be manipulated by the government, right? Because anybody who is in fear is seeking certainty. And very often, those outside events like riots or wars or whatever else, they are giving people false impression of certainty that we're going to go against somebody and we're going to hate them because we are not certain about our own future. So I just would like, and that's my tip for myself, and I would like to go into maybe sharing some tips from you ladies as well. My tip to everybody is open your mind. Just like you go and you put your wallet on a table in a restaurant and you try other cuisine, you try other flavors, be open to try and learn other people's cultures. Because if you reject somebody else's culture, that means stop buying foods from there. Stop going to those restaurants. Stop buying those spices that came all the way to India. And you would never have them if many, many centuries ago they would not be shipped, right? If you really are so small-minded, then go back home and cook only what you grow in your own garden. This is what I would like to say, because otherwise you're not going to be able to experience the whole flavor of the world. I'd see, Sylvia, you're giggling. What would you like to say about that?
Yeah, it makes me laugh, and I think in the safety of this space, we can have these conversations. And just going back to what you said about the tips, um, I, I was I grew up around the time of 9/11, where our people of my community, Muslims, were tarnished, right? They were regarded as terrorists and extremists. And then there was me navigating lots of different spaces, and I felt like there was a burden of this huge label that didn't represent me. And when I would have one-off conversations individually with people, they'd say, as in people are not of my background, they'd say, "Oh, I didn't know that was the case with Islam. This is what I thought it was because that's what's portrayed in the news and that's what's portrayed in the media." And there seems to be a theme across all of us about fear, about division, about blaming. And if we look at any situation we're in, if we don't engage our thinking, even if you're in a personal relationship with somebody, right? Your partner, your husband, whoever it is, a friendship, if you don't critically think about the situation, you go to a very default response, which is blaming, oh, you did this, you did that, that's why I'm in this situation. So we're blaming. You are fearful because there's a fear there. And what happens in the media, and let's take it from a personal perspective to a wider perspective that we're in now, fear breeds division and it creates instability. And as long as people are fighting amongst themselves about this and that, about color, about religion, about immigration, we're not making progress as a community, as a nation. And what I always say this in my work, the minority feed off the fears of the majority. And so division is called divide and rule. So my tips to people would be use your critical thinking. We are the most intelligent animals. If we took a look at the animal kingdom, human beings are the highest in terms of their intelligence. Yet we easily just absorb the Daily Mail and the Sun and the rubbish that they put out, and you think that's fact. So I'd say use your critical thinking. And the second thing is, we all love to connect. It's human connection, which creates our meaningful lives, right? Who says you can't connect to somebody who looks different to you, who speaks maybe in a slightly different accent or broken English? You speak to them, and I can assure you there will be value in something or another they say. You may learn something. So I would say critical thinking and connection.
I love that. Thank you so much. And when it comes to critical thinking, it's so important to train your muscle of critical thinking. Because think about it, back in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, I know I wasn't born then, not at all, right? But back then, if you Google, you'll find it's right. Back then, doctors were advertising on TV smoking cigarettes. Okay, that's how much brainwashing TV is doing to you. That's why I don't even have a TV. Okay, officially, I'm announcing that I don't even have a TV because I can't be asked to actually watch it. Okay, there's so much rubbish on it, right? But remember, if people were brainwashed to smoke cigarettes by doctors on TV, what else are you brainwashed about? So if you trust everything that is visible and shown to you and told as a truth on TV, then where are you going to end up? You got to switch on your critical thinking. You got to use the internet you have and do your own research. Speak to people around you and find the truth. There'll be lots of misleading information. There'll be lots of things that will be fed to you through TV or radio in order to keep you in fear. Therefore, what Sabia is saying, critical thinking is so important, because when you are able to understand what happens really in the world by having real life conversations with people who came from those places, who are experiencing what they talk about firsthand, then you understand. There's a comment from Howard here. Thank you so much, Howard, for staying with us. Really appreciate that. Another good point from Sobia regarding 9/11. The current UK troubles were sparked by the murder of 3 children in Stockport, which people wrongly attributed to Muslims. There we go. Yeah, exactly. But can you see the pattern? For some reason, again, at least I see several patterns already across last several months. Very often it goes back to Muslims. Why is it constantly fed like things are going back to Muslims?
You know,
right? Can we?
Sorry,
Yeah?
sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. No, please. I thought you had finished.
It just surprised me how, for some reason, there is tendency to constantly blame something else. In this case, it's Muslims, rather than finding the truth. So, what was your comment about that?
I was just going to say, in relation to Howard's comment, when the 3 murders took place, as a mother, I still find it very difficult to articulate how devastating that is. So there's the heartbreak. What we must emphasize is we live a human existence, and we have human emotions. And as a mother, and as a mother of a daughter who does go to clubs, and she has lots of curriculum, I can't imagine what it would be like to ever be in the shoes of those parents who've lost their children in such a tragic way. On that day, I received the fake news that a Muslim immigrant is responsible for the stabbings, and I rolled my eyes and I thought, hell has broken loose on our community, because it was fake news, but I would also receive that news and I thought, what on earth are people doing? So, you know, we just have to go back to our human emotions, that it doesn't matter what community you're from, we feel the loss because we have human emotions. But what's happened in society is we've faced labels. In history, it was Black people, then it was the Jewish, and at the moment, we're having a lot of, it's called Islamophobia, anti-Muslim hate. So that's how I felt. And the response I would say to Howard and other people who are listening to this is that people blame Muslims. Like I heard a politician saying that people who are chanting Allahu Akbar on the streets should be arrested. But I pray Allahu Akbar in my prayers, as you ladies know. I pray 5 times a day. Prayer is a huge part of my life. And just as we say goodbye, God be with you in the UK language, that's the essence of it. God be with you, that's goodbye. God save the king. We say God is the greatest. That is what Allahu Akbar means. Allahu Akbar. And it means, you usually say it, it's a prayer said in times of fear. So why should somebody be arrested for chanting a prayer which they say in times of fear? And so that's about educating yourself. And so it goes back to that point of critical thinking, because I don't want to dominate the conversation.
Oh, I agree with you. It's absolutely spot on. Thank you so much for adding that. And Chrissy, I know you have children, also grandchildren. How did you feel when you found out about the news? And what was your first reaction when you heard the rumors that obviously that was a Muslim person doing that stabbing?
It's very, very scary. But like everything else, you know, there's been an awful lot of false news around, and the devil is in the detail, unfortunately. Sometimes we don't know those details. And so there is always a choice in terms of how you respond. It is so exceptionally fearful, and I feel for the parents and the loss and the community that these children belong to. You know, these were lives that were beginning to develop, that were beginning to grow, that were beginning to flower in lots of different ways. That's why they wanted to send the children to all these different activities. It's exceptionally frightening. But unfortunately, you know, it's like everything, it's presented as a gross picture, as an overview of what happened. We don't know all the details because those have not been, you know, we've not been privy to those, unfortunately. So I personally feel that there is a certain choice. Life does happen to absolutely everybody, but how you respond to it, that is your choice. And you can be measured in your response, or you can be, as you know, Sobi has said, you can be totally fearful of what's happened, point fingers right, left and center indiscriminately. And then what happens? You just get a flurry again of things that are just catapulting from one to another without any sort of rhyme or reason. You need to halt it somewhere along the line and find the grain that's irritating and hike that out and know which grain it is.
Love that. Thank you so much. And Chrissy, what would be your tip when it comes to approaching diversity and how actually people can handle when it comes to fake news, when it comes to some information or misinformation? What would you like to suggest?
Be discerning. Be discerning. And as Sobi was saying, I would support everything she said. You need to develop a critical mindset and be aware that not everything that is projected there is 100% truth. You just need to be mindful of that. Be aware. We're all people here that are sharing one piece of land together, and we're all trying to make the best of it, or at least, you know, the greater majority do, you know, but there are always some people that cannot handle what is happening on a level that needs to be addressed, and they go out the way to make it seem much, much awful than it should be, really, instead of adopting some sort of a measured dialogue and a measured point of view.
That's beautifully said. Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate it. And I would like to hear from Maria because I know you're coming from absolutely multi-diverse, multicultural background, and you are traveling quite often for work as well. As far as I know, to Paris, which, as
Yeah.
far as I know, also lately was going through some sort of turbulence as well. So, what will be your observation as well as what will be your tips when it comes to diversity? And is France, by any chance, approaching that slightly different to UK? Is there anything we could learn from them? What do you think?
Yes, I would say the first tip, in fact, is questioning. Remember, before before the behavior by fear or lack of knowledge or any other reason is really questioning if what we are listening or looks like we are seeing, if it is really the correct version of the stories or what is really going on. And if I go a little back on the conversation in the moment you mentioned when you came to UK and your first reaction and fear, in my case was a bit different. It was not fear at all. Maybe because I was so used already to travel, and in each place I was going, I was finding different people, different culture, all the similar to that space. So my reaction when I came to UK was more amazed, was a wow, is like a bit of the whole world is here. And that is the richness of the culture. That is what make these people like it is, this country like it is, so diverse, so rich, with all, as you mentioned, if we talk about food, if we talk about colors, whatever is that influence of every different multicultural that exist in the same place. And these, you, we don't find this in many places really, you know. And we call this world where we live, we call it now global. So what does really global means? Is global only when we want it is global? It's only global when we want to travel? Is only global for the holidays, but then don't come to my space, right? So what really that means, if it is global, is global for everything, and that is richness, in the opposite of what we see some behaviors produce, right? So this is my first question and tip. Just stop and think really, is what, as you were mentioned, what we are seeing on the TV, or was some news tell us, or the neighbor said, many times go from there, the neighbor said that something happened. Is it really like that? Is it this one version? Is there another version of the same story? Just question it and then think what you want to the from the global space, and where is it that you learn, where is it that you feel more rich. As you were saying, wouldn't we miss all the good things we like to put in our cuisine if we didn't have it? So, how many other things would we lose if we didn't have other languages? How could we communicate if some years ago people didn't start moving and made us connect each other in between different countries and learn other language? My broken English is my fourth language. How could we speak if we all of us didn't move somehow and different and learn the same language in common? Right, so this is global. So let's take this more serious on a world stage and world dimension. The world is global for everything, not only for what we meant to be.
I love it. Absolutely love the challenge what you're bringing right now to all of us. Are you really global or you just choose to be global when you travel? Because it's true. Even as simple as salt. In the UK, they don't really produce salt. They might repackage it and sell it, but they don't produce salt. So if we wouldn't be open-minded enough to welcome salt into our food from other countries, we would not have salt. Just like some spices, right? Some of them came from India, some teas, some of them, I know we have Yorkshire tea, but do we grow it in Yorkshire? I need to find out if we actually grow Yorkshire tea in Yorkshire. Maybe we do. Maybe I'm not educated. Maybe we do. I don't know. Okay. I need to find out that. Okay. But the point is, if you really are so closed-minded, in that case, next time you go to the shop, buy only foods that belong to your country. Stop buying foods from other countries, because why would you? If you reject some cultures, don't buy their foods. If you reject some cultures, don't buy their drinks. Don't buy what they produce. Stay closed-minded, eat only what you grow, eat only and drink only what you produce, and stick to that. But thankfully, more people before we all were born were more open-minded. And as a result, we advanced so much because somebody invented electricity somewhere in one part of the world. Somebody else invented steam engines in another part of the world. Somebody else invented something else. And we united because we actually wanted to progress as a society. So, what are we doing now? Are we degrading now? We're supposed to be more excelling rather degrading. So let's be more open-minded. That will be my invitation for sure. Covered the saying, great points from Maria. I've missed her wisdom. Great. Well, wonderful. I would like to say, if anybody would like to ask any questions to any panelist, whether it is Maria, Chrissy, myself, or Sobia, please go ahead and tap them in the chat. Whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, we are here to answer any of your questions. So please go ahead and ask them. But before we finish off, because we are here already for 45 minutes, ladies, I'm not sure if you noticed, but it's been some time already. I would like to ask some of you just to go around the room and probably just share a few words of wisdom, and also how can we connect with you at the very end. So I would like to start with Chrissy. A few more words of wisdom before we finish off, please. What else would you like to share? What comes from your own personal perspective, personal experience when it comes to how can we welcome diversity and obviously differences around ourselves?
Well, it's something that you mentioned, the food and the culture that England has to offer. I used to have my own language classes at one stage. I used to teach EU migrants English when they first came over. And the one thing that I tried to make them aware of is Yorkshire itself. We live in a beautiful part of the world. And I've seen you go out on trips on Facebook, Olga. You've visited all different parts of it. And I think it's worth sharing that experience and making people aware of what's where and how. And I think that's the beauty as well of what England has to offer. It's got a huge, rich heritage, and it's worth making people aware of that when they come to visit as well, or when they come to live here on a permanent basis. And it's something that I enjoy, you know, as a person who lives here, who was born here. I'm very privileged in having been bicultural and speaking two languages as well. But I enjoy looking at and learning more and more and more about my host country, you know, where I am. You know, that is the beauty of it too, and people's perception of their own living here. That is very, very important, and how they view life, and being able to share that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your wisdom there. Really appreciate, Chrissy. And if somebody would like to get in touch with you, how could they do that, please?
Oh, it's very easy. I've got a LinkedIn profile, so just DM me there or on Facebook, whichever way. That's the easiest way to get in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I will definitely ensure that all links to all your profiles are below this so everybody can get in touch with you. Howard is saying here, as we all agree, the UK is in a difficult state, so is Ukraine and the Middle East. Does the panel have optimism for the future? Ooh, what a beautiful question. What a beautiful question. Thank you so much, Howard. Before we move on for Christina, what would you like to say on this? Do you think there's optimism for the future, considering how many conflicts are happening around the world and in the UK too?
I think it's apparent, particularly in terms of what we've seen recently, that people have gathered together from all sorts of different backgrounds, made a common statement. They came out in their masses to prove that, to say this is who we are. We are united in making a better outlook, seeing things through different eyes, and welcoming a better future. And that's what I see. That's what I see.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate that. Would like to go to Maria. What do you think about the optimism for the future, as Howard asked? Do you think we have a chance for that?
I think we do, Olga. And I'm going to remember a very famous speech from somebody many years ago, you will recognize immediately that started, I believe. And if we all remember Luther King's also, he started his speech and moved thousands of people of color that changed the society, right? And he started saying, I believe. So I'm saying I'm not comparing at all. But I also believe that at some point, very soon, people will be open their minds a little bit more. And my tip is, if you start looking a bit more to the history, trying understanding why the movement happened, why people did move, how the cultures did evolve, right? And maybe you understand a little bit more of the causes and everything and feel less fear, maybe, and start behaving a bit more global. And I just finish with a nice tip, just to finish this not so heavy conversation, right? And remembering, I love coffee, but as we were talking about the Yorkshire tea, if we go a little bit back in some centuries and think, well, the tea in UK and the tea time is so famous, right? And if I can tell you that the traditional tea time didn't start in UK and started with the Portuguese queen that brought to the court her habit of having tea, and she decided to join the ladies of the court and having tea at the same time. That was the starting of the tea time, right? So if sometimes we start, this is a little thing, but if we start trying to understand a bit more of the past and how things did evolve, who we are now, why we are like we are now, in terms of culture, society, all the aspects, maybe that will help people to understand a bit more at the global space and to have less fear, more understanding. And I believe that this will have a solution soon.
Oh, thank you so much, Maria. And you're spot on. It's all about again open-mindedness. And speaking about tea, I had to Google that. I had to Google that. So on the Yorkshire tea, and everybody who's watching us right now, if you don't believe me, go to yorkshiretea.co.uk and it's written there. Yorkshire tea is grown in more than 20 different places across. Are you ready for this? Africa and India, then imported to Harrogate and blended. And there's explanation. So why is it called Yorkshire tea? I'll leave it with you and I'll share the link to this particular article posted by Yorkshire Tea. Okay. So again, one more point there. Okay. If you really are against the beautiful blend of variety that we have in this beautiful country from all sorts of different parts of the world, by rejecting its people, you're going to end up with quite a few things. Okay. And I'm saying this also, I'm part of you because I became recently British. And in fact, I'd like to challenge you. Okay. I'd like to challenge you. Do me a favor, download an app called Life in the UK. Okay. Life in UK. And it's a test. It's an app where you can test your knowledge about life in the UK. Because I had to pass one of those to get British citizenship. And boy, oh boy, question they ask you. I asked so many of my British born, British bred people here in the UK, and they said, Olga, why do you need that information? I said, I don't know. I'm asked to know this information to pass my citizenship test, right? My life in UK is for receiving the citizenship. And the truth is, so much information we are not even aware of unless we learn it. Okay, so go back in history, educate yourself. You'll become automatically more open-minded, and you will be more grateful for diversity we have of everything, not just people, of everything. Thankfully, because of everything came from all other parts around the world. Okay, so do yourself a favor, educate yourself, download the app, ask for a couple of questions and see How many times you will fail? I can guarantee you will fail with every single question. That's for sure. Anyways, I'd like to go to Sobia now. What would be your final tip? Oh, before we go to Sobia, Maria, how can we reach out to you? Sorry, Sobia. In a minute, I would like to ask Maria how we could reach out to you, how we can stay in touch with you.
Yeah, the best way is also through my LinkedIn profile that will in the end.
I will definitely share it for sure under
Thank
this
you.
video. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Maria. Sobia, finally going to you. Apologies about that little confusion. But yes, what tip would you like to share from yourself, my darling, and how we could reach out to you?
Sure. I really appreciate the lightheartedness of Yorkshire tea, because I was there also frantically Googling it, and I was surprised to find out it's in Sri Lanka, Kenya, and also India. So that kind of sums up a lot, really. And then it's branded as Harrogate Yorkshire tea. So that's a great example. But in terms of I would like to just mention a realistic view, which it touched upon everybody's views as well, is this conversation was about the riots, about the divisiveness, about the division, about the hate, about immigrants not being welcomed here. We've talked about history, about being open, about being knowledgeable. I would like to emphasize that nobody leaves their home country seeking safety in a foreign land. Nobody wants to leave the safety of their home, their family, their loved ones. So people who've immigrated to the UK, if you just step a few decades back, what has our country, and when I say our country, the United Kingdom, what role have they played in destabilizing their country that they feel they need to seek refuge in the UK? I think that's really important for context, and going back to critical thinking. So I would like to end on the fact that I think it's really important that we engage our critical thinking, we engage our minds, we think about what we're reading and absorbing and analyze it and critically think about it. Inform ourselves from different news outlets, not just the Daily Mail. It might be a bit of a groundbreaker for people, but that's not the most authentic. Well, actually, it's not authentic anyway. It's a tabloid newspaper. Go to different sources, go to different news channels, read different newspapers to get a different perspective. But the most important thing is connection. Have a conversation with somebody. If you saw me at an event and you spoke to me, you would have a very different perspective of seeing me on the front page of a newspaper that's inciting fear in you.
Yeah.
So connect with people and engage critical thinking. And how to connect with me, Olga, you will be sharing my LinkedIn profile. That's the best way to connect with me.
Thank you so much. I love your enforcement of the critical thinking. It's really, really valuable. And yes, I will definitely share the LinkedIn link to all of your profiles, ladies, just below this video, so everybody can connect with you. And I would like to strongly suggest you reach out to these ladies, learn from them, and make sure you engage with them, because their content is amazing. You will learn so much. And again, it's about you becoming better version of yourself. You can either choose to go back into cave times and live in a cave and not educate yourself, or you can become the best version of yourself, not only by welcoming diversity, but just by educating yourself, being open-minded person, somebody who actually is welcoming learnings, and this way is growing, right? And remember, one more thing I would like to say as a tip from myself, probably, is when you think that the world is turning around you, it's egocentric and it is very, very narcissistic. One more point is about that usually in politics, there are people who are very insecure about themselves, who are narcissistic, who are pathological liars, who also are very manipulative. So when these type of people get to politics, and we all know it, I don't have to even say it because we all know it, right? Because otherwise we wouldn't be seeing so much mess around the world right now. But when these type of people get to politics, unfortunately, they use their power for their own personal reasons, okay? To find their own inner demons, to fight their own insecurities. So one thing what you could do as individual in the current society is educate yourself and become a better version, somebody who is not holding on to grudges or full of insecurities, that once you get to power, you use against the society, but somebody who actually can get into the power, but for the goodness of the society. So one thing you can do is educate yourself, get to power, and then make a difference in the world. But that starts with you exercising your critical thinking, because the reason why those people don't want you to get to power, those who educate people, because they want to rule the world. They want to rule the world, right? So what you can do is exercise your critical thinking, go more global, as Maria says, right? Be more welcoming, be more embracing, as Chrissy says, and actually get to power and then help change the world, and also lead by example. Be a better parent. Stop talking rubbish in front of your children. Stop judging other cultures in front of your children, because then those children are going to schools and they're bullying other children from other cultures. And as Howard, he was saying about the conflict or war between Ukraine and Russia, as well as the Middle East, Palestine and Israeli war, right? Unfortunately, children from all sorts of backgrounds are suffering, and adults as well. Let's admit it. In fact, I must say for myself, and I'll finish with this, that when the whole thing with Russia and Ukraine started, before that, and some of you know, I was proudly calling myself Russia because I couldn't really relate to Latvian culture. I was born in Latvia, but I did not come from Latvian culture. And I have nothing to do with Russia in terms of roots or blood, but my native language was Russian because of Soviet Union, right? So I was proudly calling myself Russian. And seriously, since the war, I'm Latvian, because I refuse to belong to somewhere where I know what damage they create. And even though I don't support one party or another, when it comes to all conflicts around the world, I always say one thing: I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend. And that means my heart is crying for so many people, because across multiple conflicts in the world, across multiple wars and other situations, people are dying. Those people who are innocent, those people who we raised as mothers, we were looking after as sisters, we are daughters of, right? And so on, we are wives of. So my heart is crying for all people, but I choose to really stay open minded and not to judge my friends just because they came from there or here, right? And if I can do it, everybody can do it. And all four of us, we came from four different generations, we came from four different backgrounds. And this group today is because we are four friends, so we're part of the mastermind. This was not done because we want to deliberately exclude somebody, right? And that's why we did not involve somebody. No, this group is here because for 6 years, every month we meet as a part of our mastermind. That's why we on Tuesday were talking about this recent news, and we just had a calling to really come here and bring our own perspective as somebody that actually were rubbing the shoulders for 6 years alongside each other. I went through so many different conflicts and was supporting each other as much as we could, because we know firsthand how difficult some situations were. So we really hope you learned something today. We really hope you took something away, and we really hope you as a result will be more open-minded. You will be more embracing the diversity of everything that is not only on your table but also surrounding you, and you will finally stop listening to media that is making you being brainwashed and therefore manipulated, so you can actually educate yourself and hopefully one day go to power and lead this country with better integrity and better future view. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening to us today. Ladies, thank you so much for doing this with me today, for sharing your stories, for sharing your takeaways, for sharing your background with us. I appreciate you and I love you. Sobia, yes, what would you like to add?
I think what we represent internally, we're all different faiths. Some of us don't follow a faith. We're different nationalities.
Yeah.
I would go on to say that we have a connection which is incredibly powerful. And so there's no physical attribute that unites us. We're different ethnicities, different faiths or no faiths, different countries,
Heights.
different different heights, different ages. And so I just think that's incredibly powerful. And I think I really wanted to emphasize how different and diverse we are, and how strong a bond we have, and how openly we can have conversations. And that is because we've engaged our minds, and we've used our thinking, we've connected, we respect each other, and that can happen outside as well. So
Yes.
Howard's point was, if we didn't have hope, we'd be going, as you said, back to the cave ages, right? Go back into the cave. So we all have to have hope, every single one of us.
So true. Thank you so much. And I love the word you use, that respect each other. Because respect starts with welcoming each other. It starts with, I am willing to understand you, I'm willing to learn about you, and I'm willing just to have a conversation with you. So let's respect each other more as a society. And with that, we definitely will have more optimism for the future. But it all starts with individuals, right? Because you all are creating that society. So let's take personal responsibility by how we show up for ourselves in front of our children who are learning from us by default. And let's create a better society. And this way, we will definitely have a very optimistic future. So once more, thank you so much for listening. Please share this video with somebody who you think could learn something or would resonate with this, or maybe they just need a little bit of encouragement through this video. So please share this with your loved ones. And ladies, once more, big hugs to you all. I really appreciate you, and thank you so much for being here with me today. Thank you.